I know how much time you and your wife and your family devote to, your foundation.
Yeah, we're going there after this. As a matter of fact, one of the sponsors, I think, is Parkinson's. Does Parkinson's sponsor anything? The one in Tucson, right? Family Fest in Tucson? Because maybe they could sponsor air conditioning in here. It's 4,000 degrees in here.
Yeah. Can we call on that? Well, listen, we want, your moneymaker here. You got your light on and everything.
There's a rite of passage. It takes wild courage.
Yes.
Wild.
I really look up to you in the business.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Billy.
You're one of the reasons here in Arizona and beyond, certainly, that I'm in this business, in the business of, I guess, communicating and connecting and talking to people. And I wanted to talk to you about the word longevity, because that's something you've certainly had in this business. And in TV, in radio, in media, that's hard. Longevity's hard. People are moving markets. People are getting fired. People are reinventing themselves constantly. Johnjay and Rich, you guys have been around. And I mean that in the best possible way. Why you? Why your show? Why are you still here? Why are you still connecting everywhere I go? People that see me they're like, oh, Johnjay and Rich. You say iHeartRadio, Johnjay and Rich. Why is that buzz still buzzing?
That's really cool that you say that about us. So thank you. When you said longevity, I thought you were going to start talking about anti-aging and cold plunges and saunas and stuff. I thought, oh yeah, I can talk about that. That is really a great question. I think one of the things we do with our shows, we try to be as relevant as possible. We try to be on top of pop culture. We try to be on the pulse of whatever's going on in the world. So I felt that we've never been outdated or just out of touch. I think we're always refreshing. We always get, people grow from the show, move on from the show. We get new people that come up, and we just are always sharing our lives. And I think we stay connected. People have grown up with us. I took a call today from a guy that said, I've been listening to you since 2001. I was 16 when I was just started driving, and I was this, and it's like, we're just kind of a part of the fabric of Arizona now,
Yeah. What has podcasting done? Because obviously, you guys are live on the air, every morning, but then the podcasting, and I'm aware of your show, and I know that you guys also do great numbers there. Mm-hmm. That's something 20 years ago you probably didn't envision, right?
Right.
How has that shifted things for you guys?
Well, what's interesting? I'm glad you asked that question. I feel that podcasting, because in radio, they used to have this thing called diaries. In the smaller markets, they have diaries where listeners, they give them like $50 and they say, carry this piece of paper with you and write down everything you listen to, right? And back then, when they did that, it was more about memory. What were you listening to? So the radio stations played tricks, Johnjay and Rich, Johnjay and Rich, Johnjay and Rich. So if you were writing something down, you'd be like, oh yeah, Johnjay and Rich. It doesn't mean you were really listening to them, right? So I think it was in 2008 or 2009, larger cities got PPM, personal people meters. And those were little pagers that people carry. And they can pick up what people are listening to, so you can't really fake it, right? So what happened was, the PPM meters now made you want to get to things quicker. You had to move. You couldn't do long form content. Whereas the diary markets, you could do long form content. So in my opinion, podcasts are old school radio diary markets. Long form radio shows where we could do a 20-minute interview with freaking 50 Cent or Kanye West, or Charlie Sheen, and not worry about taking a break and getting to commercial, not worry about, you only have 3 minutes to get this guy. You got to be, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's to me the difference between podcasting and what's going on right now with radio.
That's cool. I think that's why we like this program with Ferrari and I, because we can kind of look under the hood, go a little bit deeper than normal, as opposed to on TV or radio when you just you have a hard out, you have a segment. Oh, we got to get out. Your producer's giving you the signal. Right. And I think podcasting, especially for you, because I know you personally, I know you're very thoughtful and you're a very deep person too. Yes. And it's not just a little bye, 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 here comes the commercial. There's more to it than that.
Right. And back in the day when we would do these, we were pretty known for our interviews, and we would always get pressed on all interviews because we would just sit down with the artist and take our time. Now you can't take your time. And with that, I also now don't like interviewing artists. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a waste of time. Like, oh, hey, will you get Selena Gomez for 3.5 minutes? You know what I mean? Because you want to be able to talk to somebody and get chunks of material, good meat out of them. And you can't do that nowadays unless you're doing this. right now, you know?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about how Billy and I talk is that we come from two different angles, but there's like an openness there for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So I come from more just this blank slate. I've never met you. Of course, I know who you are in that I've tuned in a few times, and I found you to be very entertaining and charismatic, and I would crack up a lot on some of the things that you guys, different shows that you had. So when Billy said that you guys are friends, I was like, oh, it'd be so great, because I can't imagine you're on this end very often. And this is why I have curiosity about this world, because we've been in this conversation of mass a lot. And I've never even asked you this, but I'm wondering about it, because I'm a singer, I'm a performer, and I understand, a certain presentation, and also people have an image of you then. Mm-hmm. And then behind the scenes, you kind of go, am I this person everywhere? Or am I one person here and one person here? And then when you're on the radio, it seems like you almost have to be this presentation a lot. I had a friend once, and he forgot that we were in a personal gathering, and he was a radio guy. And all of a sudden he was agitated or something, and somebody said, "Happy Thanksgiving." And he turned on his radio voice and he goes, "Happy Thanksgiving to you." And I was like, what was that? So I'm
that's the mask. That's
I'm wondering
another
how you guys experience that. If we could get slightly vulnerable, like a little deep inside of that.
Well, you just said you're a performer. So, when you get up on stage, you got to be on, right? So I'm hoping that I'm the exact same person I am on the radio, off the radio. Although when I'm on the radio, I'm on stage. I've got to be on. So I'm moving a little bit faster. I'm a little bit more on the move, going 100 miles an hour. Versus when I'm off the radio, I can be a little bit laid back. But I feel I'm the same on and off. I don't think I have a mask. I try to be as authentic as I can.
What happens when you just had like a terrible evening? Then you woke up, you felt kind of crappy.
That was 2 days ago.
And then you wake up and you're driving to the studio and you're just like, it's only Tuesday. Like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't know if I can put on the face.
No, I've never. I've had bad night sleeps, but I've never not been excited to come into work.
Is that true?
100%. Every day when I get up in the morning, I have my routines. Just like, you text me earlier and you said, "Hey, park in the handicap parking space." I said, I can't do that.
Right. Yeah, why did you say that?
Because I have.
Do you know how many phone calls I had to make to make to the Scottsdale City Council saying, "It's Johnjay, can you park in the handicap?"
I don't want to park in the handicap parking space. I have certain rituals, certain things in my life that I will not do. I will not walk on a handicap parking space. I will not park in a handicap parking space. So I won't even walk over it because that's bad karma. I don't want to put that.
I thought maybe you were worried from the point of like someone sees you get out of the car, like,
no.
Oh my God, get on X, get on Instagram, Johnjay from Johnjay and Rich.
No. That's, come on, my ego's not that big.
Well,
it's more about, in 2011, my mother had brain cancer and I was taking her to chemo and radiation, and we had the parking spot to park. And to take her to those events, I saw how valuable those parking spaces were. And I was kind of like, I don't ever want to cross that space. I don't ever want, I respect that space. So that's one of the reasons. So with that, when I get up in the morning to go to work, I'm so grateful that I have this job. I love what I do. I freaking love it. So I get up in the morning. I usually get up before my alarm. My wife and I were talking about the other day. She hasn't heard the alarm go off because I get up before my alarm, and I have my routines, and I go through my, I'm grateful. I write down things that I'm grateful for every single morning. I do all these things that I do. So by the time I get to the radio station, let's go.
Wow. That's awesome. That's amazing. I got to ask you, there's a lot of people watching this and they're like, oh, well, Billy and Ferrari, and you guys are doing a cool show, and this is your job. And there's Johnjay, and he's on the radio and he's on the news and he's got all this amazing stuff, and what a career. But a lot of people are like, yeah, they're just listening in their cubicle right now, and they work for, I don't know, some insurance company, and they're just the monotonous. We talk about this a lot, that wheel, right? The hamster on the wheel. What do you say to people that aren't like, Monday morning, let's go, I'm fired? I'm fired up every time we do this show. I'm so excited.
How do I get the people that aren't fired up about their lives?
People that are just going through the daily grind, one after the other. I get another paycheck in 2 weeks, and health insurance and 401k and saving, and oh my God, I got to pay down the mortgage, and I'm sick of the damn spreadsheet. The spreadsheet. Who the hell invented Excel?
The way I look, there's people that would pray to have that job.
Expand on that.
Well, you've got people, okay, a little backstory. 11th grade, I was in school, and I remember they had a big seminar because they brought this kid into school that was in a car accident, and he was a burn victim. He had burned his fingers and his head and his eyes, and his name was Lou. He was like a genius. He was in my geometry class. And we had this whole class session about how to deal with a burn victim. And this kid, every 6 months, would have to have his eyelids slit open because the scar tissue would cross over, right? And he had nubs, and he would walk around school. And I remember the first day, a girl passed out when she saw him, and it was so much drama. And this guy was striving to stay alive every single day. And that made such an impact on me that no matter how bad life gets, for me, in my opinion, there's Lou.
Oh, man.
Do you know what I mean? So since 11th grade, I've kind of had that, Lou and his sister. Now, although he turned me in for copying off of him, I wasn't a big fan of Lou's. But
he was the genius. He was a smart
genius. And I couldn't understand planes and geometry and trigonometry. And I was like, Lou, that's number 4. And he was like, told on me.
I love that. I love that metaphor, though, that analogy. Like, there's a Lou out there.
There's a Lou out there. And there's people like, oh, if you're in a cubicle and you're just doing accounting, there's somebody doesn't have that wants that. So, that's kind of how I look at certain things.
That's
like, there's 1,000 people that want my job. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it's like, I get it. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I love that. I love that perspective, and I love that it feels authentic coming from you. And sometimes there's other layers for people to get through before they can get that. Otherwise, it's just ashamed to feel the way that I feel. Because I remember when I was young, I used to say something to my dad about how I felt about something. And his comeback oftentimes would be like, Angela, there are people starving in Africa. And I'd be like, oh, but I still feel sad right now. I still feel like this isn't working for me right now. And connecting to people in Africa, I have a lot of honor there. I really have a lot of, I love there, but that's not helping me right now.
Well, that comes down to, I think, to listening and solving problems. And your dad is trying to be a dad and probably trying to make you like, hey, it's okay. You have it good. Whereas maybe you just wanted to vent, right? Maybe you just wanted him to listen. I've been learning a lot about that in therapy. Listening, like with my wife, God bless her, who's sitting here, my wife, Blake, it's like, sometimes she says things to me and I try to solve things. And it's like, no, just let her talk. Just listen. Right. So that's how I felt like with your dad. Your dad sees his daughter in pain. He wants to fix it. Hey, it's okay. Think there's 1 billion people that are starving in India and China and whatever. It's okay over here. That's how I look at it through your dad's point of view. But I'm a dad, so I
wanted to shift gears for a second. I'm super curious about this. As someone that interviews people and is always learning and reminding, when you said listening, that's something that I'm always working on. A lot of the great interviewers that I've had the opportunity to meet and to interview, like yourself, they always say, one piece of advice: I want to be a better interviewer. I want to ask better questions. I want to talk better. No, you need to listen. Mm-hmm. Actually listen to what your guest is saying. And then you can throw this little thing out and then have a real conversation. Mm-hmm. Pick up on, because what he or she is saying is maybe it's digging deeper. Maybe it's going to lead to a conversation you weren't even prepared for. And that's where it gets real. Mm-hmm. So as someone that's done countless interviews with the biggest stars in the world, when you're going into that, how much prep do you do? And how do you feel? How do you hold court, so to speak?
That is a great question. And I have 2 schools of thought, and I battle this all the time because it's bit me in the ass a few times. I used to want to do it to where I didn't know anything about I didn't research. I just knew what I knew, right? I didn't want to research anything because I wanted it to be like, I always looked at it like, remember back in the day when Southwest Airlines had the seats that sat this way and you could sit, you'd be sitting with people. Do you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. You'd sit and someone's sitting right here. Or let's just say you're on a plane sitting next to somebody. I always wanted it to be like I had an hour flight to LA and the guest was next to me. And I'm getting to know this stranger on the plane by the time I land. That's how I always looked at it. But it bit me in the butt sometimes because shame on me for not knowing this about them. You know what I mean? And it was terrible. I remember we interviewed a bunch. We were at some festival in Las Vegas, Rich and I, and we were interviewing like the Goo Goo Dolls. It was Nickelback, and it was all these, early 2000 bands. And everyone kept making these comments like, yeah, we perform live. We're real. And I was like, all right. And then Green Day comes in. We're real. We perform live. And I'm like, what the hell's going on, Rich? And it was Sunday morning. It was right after Ashley Simpson on Saturday Night Live did that flub. And I had no idea, right? And I wish I could have been able to be like, oh man, how was that Ashley Simpson last night? How do you feel about that?
Right.
So that kind of like bit me in the butt. But at the same time, asking authentic questions, learning about somebody. We had this band in the other day, Shinedown, great guys. And I didn't know anything about Shinedown. And they had like 23 #1 hits. So I was like kind of upset at myself that I didn't know that. So I'm Googling them and I see that the guy's lost a lot of weight and he struggled with drugs. And I'm like, I don't want to ask him that. I want it to come out normally. Right? But I didn't. And I didn't go there and I was bummed at myself for not asking him about that. So it's kind of like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know which is the path to take.
Right.
With Justin Bieber, I didn't know anything about him at the time. And we just started talking, things start spewing out. And when you're not rushed, things come out, gems come out. You know, like same with Selena Gomez, Oprah Winfrey, just these great gems come out when you just don't really know. Because they get asked the same questions all the time. You go to Wikipedia, read their same stuff. Oh, you have a golden retriever? You know what I mean?
So I'm going to put you on the spot. There's like, what is the quote? Like, be careful who you look up to, or don't always look up to your heroes, or something along those lines. Yeah. You don't have to say a name, but have you had an instance where it's a Bieber or an Oprah or a Miley Cyrus, whoever it might be, huge star, international star, and you have this one idea of her or him, the mask they wear in public, and then you got to look like when they were interacting with their publicist or their manager or their security guard, and you're like, oh man, he's like really an asshole. Have you seen that side of people and been, I guess, disappointed?
The bigger the star that I've met, they've all been first class. I can't think of one story. I could tell you about the up-and-comers. The up-and-comers sometimes think that they are God's gift to everything. In fact, I had a run-in with somebody not run-in, it was just about 1.5 years ago. And it's a radio personality that got really, really big, really big. And me and this radio personality started out at the same time. We worked together. We spent so much time together. We were almost inseparable because of work. And this guy got really big. And I saw him at this event and I had to wait. There was all these people going to say hi to him. So finally, when he was clear, I said hey to him. And the dude didn't give me the time of day. And I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, it was unbelievable.
That's so weird. I always thought Ryan Seacrest was
No, it wasn't
nice
Ryan Seacrest. It's a sports guy. It's
okay,
a sports guy, which I'm not in the sports world, but I started in the sports world.
Isn't that a little bit it's disappointing, right? Like,
right. Seacrest has always been first class. I'm truly first class. Yeah.
So as far as like with the whole celebrity stuff and the celebrity interviews, does that still jazz you nowadays? You said you made a comment like, oh, we get 3 minutes with Selena Gomez, whoever it is.
Oh, that was an example.
But like as an example, I get it. And I get all those like press releases like, hey, from 10 to 10:04, you can have blah, blah, blah. Right. I'm like, like I'm over that. Right. Do you still get like jazz, like fired up when it's a big name? Is that still important? Or is Johnjay and Rich so big now that it's more about the show than having some big guest?
Well, it's about the show. It's always about the show. It's about our listeners. Always our show's about our listeners. It's not about the guests. It's not about us. Always about entertaining our listeners. But yeah, if we get a B, C level guest, we usually put that on a podcast. We don't put that on air content. Because like I said, PPM, you only got so much time. And it's got to be a home run every time. Whereas a podcast, I could take my time. Oh, we're interviewing so-and-so. Or we got to interview so-and-so so that we get the interview with so-and-so. So we'll do, you got to play that game kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't think of the last, we had Ludacris on not that long ago. That was cool.
It's still fun, right? I mean,
it's a lot of fun, but all these celebrities, they give you 3 to 5 minutes and they all ask the same question and you have the same questions and they tell you what you can't ask. And everyone's already asked them that. And so it's just routine. So I just don't care.
You know By the way, Johnjay did not have that. He said that everything's on the table. We did not have any like topics.
I didn't know what your podcast was about, right? I came in, I said,
well, I love speaking of that, it's actually called Wild Courage.
That's what this podcast is called?
This is what it's called. Yeah. Because my belief, and Billy has his own way that he resonates with courage. It's the link to everything. Mm-hmm. The universe is ruled by the courageous hearts. So, question for you. How do you find yourself to be courageous in your life?
How do I think I was courageous to take the leaps that I took to get to where I am. I think about my parents a lot. A lot of times I think about my parents a lot when it comes to courage. My mother's from Mexico. My father's from the Netherlands. I can't imagine, think about this, leaving the country that you grew up in to go to another country and start a new life, which is what both of them did. That's courage. For me, being so young and stupid, I just went and I want to go be on the radio. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'll move to Cincinnati. Yeah, I'll move to Houston. And that, when I look back at those movements, I'm like, oh my God, what was I doing? I could never do that now. now I have a family. Now I'm like, so now I think I just have, I don't know where my courage lies right now.
Well, and that's why it's so great, because if you think about it, what was courageous to us at one point, it does have a ripple effect in our lives. And then where we are in whatever present moment, there's a new defining of that. Mm-hmm. And probably here it might be, what I've noticed more and more, it's this willingness to be vulnerable. And then there's an infinite rabbit hole into what that is. Mm-hmm. I recently went to a retreat where I've never seen such authenticity and vulnerability in my entire life. In fact, it made me weep because I didn't realize how much I longed for that type of real connection, because there's a lot of being on in life. Hey, how you doing, man? Oh, so right. Oh, yeah. And then when you start to strip that, and then we have permission to just start letting it all hang out and letting it all go and letting it all show, like being exposed, being witnessed, and being loved there in the place.
What was the retreat?
It was called the Path of Love. And this one was in Colorado, but they're all over the world. And holy shit, we haven't talked about it yet, but it's so hard to put into words because it was such an embodied experience. But I'll tell you what, you have little small groups, and those 8 of us, we probably know each other better than anybody in our entire lives.
8 people in your group?
In our small group, but 30 people. It's intimate.
And for like 3 or 4 days?
It was a whole week. No phone, no nothing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's actually silent outside of when you do, the groups get together. So going to dinner, going to lunch, retiring to your rooms, silent. Talk about
was it because
vulnerable.
You were open to share everything? Sometimes when there's a stranger, it's easier to share the deep, dark things about your life, good and bad, because they don't have any preconceived notions.
Could be.
I mean, you're just wide open. You ever met someone? You're like,
just yesterday,
right?
Yesterday, this is my wife and I have a dog rescue, and she was at the Henry eating inside the Henry, and a stray dog ran inside the Henry and found her. Isn't that random?
You of all people,
right,
would love puppies.
In the Henry, like management was running, trying to catch the dog, and it ran up to her.
That's crazy.
So she took the dog to our dog rescue, and later on, it turns out the guy was at the bank, at the Chase Bank, and then they told him we had the dog. So we met with this guy. We met him at the shelter, and he just started spewing like I shouldn't use the word spew, but he was like his son. He had twins. His son had just died. He was in the Marines. He was a Navy SEAL. He parachuted, been shot. He was in the Gulf War. He was just talking. He had a Medal of Honor from his grandfather in his car. It was a 12-minute, I taped the whole thing because I didn't know when he showed up whether this guy was safe, not safe, right? So I just hit my phone and hit record. And when I just watched it last night. It's 12 minutes long. And in 12 minutes, this guy just wanted to talk so much about himself. And I feel so bad for him. He's a vet. He loves these dogs more than anything. So we load him up with food. But anyway, yeah, people want to talk. So I can't imagine being retreated and not talking.
Well, there's a whole other, then we get past all the chatter. And every answer we ever want, you're seeking or searching, maybe go to therapy. And what we don't realize is we just never allow ourselves enough stillness to let it arise. So, and it's not easy. I mean, people were cracking a little bit because they just wanted to be like, hey, how was your thing? They couldn't keep it in.
Well, that's the problem with a lot of times with radio. So it's like there's no downtime. Everyone's talking.
So that's why there's something there probably for you and a new level of courage because of all that you've grown, because your courage in the past led you to here. And now there's something else growing because of all that noise and chaos.
But your retreat reminds me of before I got my own radio show, I was doing improv with a group called the Groundlings in Los Angeles. And one of the things we learned in the classes at the Groundlings was you do a scene and you just go. You go improvise. And then when you're just out of stuff, that's when all the funny shit happens.
That's amazing.
So it's kind of like your retreat as far as everyone's talking. And when you're out of done talking, all of a sudden all the gold comes out, all the whatever comes out. So, and that's what we used to do old form radio. We'd be doing these bits on the air and just taking our time. Then at the end is all the good stuff came out. But now with the way the rating system is, You got to get the good stuff. You got to get good stuff right away. We don't have time we got no foreplay. You got to get right to the fucking.
Love that. All right. So we got a couple minutes left, and I want to talk to you about your various foundations and all the amazing work you do.
This is great,
Arizona.
Billy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. This is fun.
And I love your shirt. My son plays basketball in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
So I love seeing
well, thank you.
He plays right over here.
Okay, good. Right in
Oahu.
Right around here, huh?
Honolulu.
Well, you mentioned your wife, you mentioned your son, your family, you've got kids. You live here in Arizona. People know that, right? But your show, how many markets are you in?
We're in 24 different cities, but we're also on the iHeart app all around the country. Like we're not on in LA, and we have 300,000 daily downloads out of LA.
So it's all over the place. So, and you're so fun and you're so cool on the air and you're so calm and thoughtful in person. I would imagine people approach you when you're with your wife, when you're with your kids, like all the time.
Yeah.
Are there moments where it's like, sorry, dude,
No.
this is my time?
No.
See, I thought you'd answer that way.
No.
Are you just so grateful?
I am grateful. I think I just said this the other day. I was at this event at State Farm Stadium. It was the March Madness finale. And I was tired. I was wiped out. I was so exhausted, but I had gone, my neighbor invited me to go. So we went. We're standing in this line to get a beer. I don't drink. He was getting a beer. And this guy comes over and says hi to me. And I didn't remember him. He was a client of the radio station, and I didn't remember him. And then he walked away. And the guy I was with said, do you get that all the time? I go, yeah, it's cool. And I was like, was I mean to him? Was I rude to him? And I was like, oh God, because I was so, lost. I was so tired. And I tried to find him and tell him I was sorry, but it turns out I wasn't mean to him at all. But I was like, when that stops, then that's a problem. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I love it. Every day I was at we're Panda Express right down the street yesterday. And I walked in and the guy said, hey to me, right? I mean, like, I don't mind being interrupted ever. Sometimes my family gets a little irritated. I was
wondering, I'm looking at Blake there. Like, I mean, you're sitting at dinner. Blake's not mic'd up. She should be. You're sitting at dinner and it's like, hey, can I get a picture? It must get, at certain moments, you have bad moments too, right? Serious conversation with your kids or something. It's like, now's not the time. But
it does. It bothers my kids sometimes too.
I've seen you so much, interacted with other people in public, and you're always just so open, so kind to people. And I always recognize that.
Well, I'm grateful that they listen. I mean, these people listen, they take the time out of their day to listen to my stories, to listen to my show. I'm extremely grateful. If they want to get a picture, I'm grateful. I'm happy. I'd love it.
Johnjay's open for pictures. There it is. It's out there public. So tell us, what's going on in November?
November 9th, we're having an event at Vertuccio Farms in Mesa. It's called Love Pup Family Fest. It's an event that we've done for like 5 or 6, 7 years. We reinvite, my wife and I run the Love Pup Dog Rescue. And so we started to invite every dog rescue in Arizona to come showcase their dogs for free. And then we have an artist, we have a couple artists, we have all kinds of tents and vendors and food, and it's free. We ask people to come by and bring leashes or bring canned dog food or puppy pads, stuff like that. We give those to all the rescues. And what happens every year is every dog that's there gets adopted. So it's a beautiful event. I invite you guys to come out and jump on stage and say hi. Awesome. We've had about 1 year, 12,000 people show up. And, wow. So it's really coming together. McCarthy Construction sponsoring, Lerner and Rowe sponsoring.
I know them.
Yeah, they're solid people.
Yeah.
Lerner and Rowe, solid people too.
Great,
really great guys. Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. It's awesome that you not only do the show and everything you got going on professionally, but you also, I know how much time you and your wife and your family devote to, your foundation.
Yeah, we're going there after this. As a matter of fact, one of the sponsors, I think, is Parkinson's. Does Parkinson sponsor anything? The one in Tucson, right? Family Fest in Tucson? Because maybe they could sponsor air conditioning in here. It's 4,000 degrees in here.
Yeah. Can we call on them? Well, listen, we want your moneymaker here. You got your light on and everything. I love this conversation. I've like I said, I've looked up to you for a long time.
You're a workaholic, Billy. I tried to hire you.
Yeah.
I tried to get this guy to.
Now we're getting. Can we cut the tapes? No, I'm joking. Listen. No, a lot of us in this business, the business of communication, look up to you, and not only because of your career, but really the type of guy you are.
Oh, thanks, man.
And it's a special kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't be the guy I was without this woman over here.
No,
she's
sweet.
Isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Last word
Okay,
there.
I have a last question, but it's a repeat question because I'd like closure for this question.
You already asked this
She
question?
does not stop. She's relentless.
Well, the courage part.
Okay.
And if we were to touch on where you are today and we were to look at it an aspect of, okay, if I did this thing, that would be courageous for me.
Okay.
What is that stretch for you today?
It's probably the next step in my career. Probably. I don't know what that is yet. I don't know if it's re-signing with iHeart on KISS, going to another radio station. I don't know. What
So
decision?
maybe it could possibly be change.
It could be in the next, I think I got 2 years left.
You just say retire?
I don't know. I don't want to. I could sign, if they put a 10-year deal in front of me right now, I'd sign it. I love what I do. But at the same time, her and I want to go travel around the world and do our thing,
I hear that.
Being available to change.
Oh, I'm very open to change. Everything's changing. If you don't change, you're not growing. If you're not growing, you're staying the same. If you're staying the same, you lose.
I hear that.
You got to move.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Gotta move. My man.
Thanks, Billy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, we're at the Pad Lab studio in Scottsdale, your go-to for real estate and mortgages. Whether you're buying, selling, or need financing, trust their 2 decades of expertise. Visit padlabaz.com to kickstart your journey. And if you're a pro seeking a dynamic team, check out padlabcareers.com. Let's make moves with Pad Lab.